Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Surprise, surprise. The title of the talk this morning is this: Under the Influence. I don't know what you're thinking about, but the spiritual principle is this: we have the mind of the Christ, but are we using it? I'm using a book, Empath to Mystic: The Art of Mastering Your Intuition and Fearlessly Being Yourself, by Aaran Solh. Recently, I watched the series Messiah on Netflix. I know you think I only watch television, right? But it's a story about a man who's in the Middle East who's claiming to be the end-time arrival of Isa or Jesus. Don't worry, I'm not going to spoil it for you. Messiah, Hebrew word that means anointed. In Greek, it is Christ. But the idea in the history is it is a great priest, it is a cosmic judge, a warrior king, a great deliverer from oppression, the King of the Jews. The belief was that the only person who should lead Israel would be someone from the house of David. And that was not the case at the time. So they expected God to provide a warrior king to deliver them. In the Messiah series, people immediately followed him, and they are under his influence. He didn't even have to convince them. They wanted to believe. What I find interesting is Paul and Jesus all talked about the end time that would happen within their lifetime. The idea of a second coming doesn't come until way after the death of Jesus. It was necessary by experience to update the expectation. Now, the second coming is a really big deal. It has made more movies than anything imaginable. There are so many books. The second coming, it's always a really big deal. What is quite interesting to me, it's only mentioned a few times in the Bible. And the word rapture isn't in there at all. But every generation since the time of Jesus has thought that it was the end time. Why the obsession with the end? What's this with this secret exit strategy? But see, you have to be based on separation or the idea of scarcity, that God doesn't have enough love for everyone for you to believe that this is necessary. See, I think some people do not want to be the change that we are called to be in the world. We don't want the responsibility. So we have the great excuse: Jesus is coming back. Now, I think the Messiah series, the whole experience, is actually quite believable. Don't forget, it wouldn't be the first time. Jim Jones, The People's Temple, Charles Manson, David Koresh, the Branch Davidians, Heaven's Gate. All of these groups were based on some form of violence. Why would you believe that if God is coming back as Jesus, that it has to be violent? To me, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. But some are looking for someone to answer their deepest questions, looking for someone to give direction, to give us meaning. But whose influence are you under? The writer of Corinthians says this: we have the mind of the Christ, the same mind that Jesus has. We have. Now, this line comes in a discourse about spiritual wisdom. Spiritual wisdom. And it says that we will be led into the knowledge of what God has planned for us. Because really nothing that you can conceive is as good as it gets. It reads, eyes haven't seen and ears haven't heard, neither has entered into the human mind the good that God has for us. But it has been revealed to us by the Spirit. Are we under the influence of Spirit? We have the mind of Christ. Are we using it? And I call this intuition. The ability to understand something immediately, to have that inner knowing that it is true without reasoning. Reasoning is this logical way of looking at things, right? You look at something logically and it just kind of makes sense. But it makes a difference where you start with your logic. If you start from the world of effect, you will get one answer. And if you start from the word cause, you end up someplace else. We have to get back to truth. And when we live in the world of effect, we get to truth the hard way. Other than living from cause that will take us there directly. Starting with effect, I call getting to the end of my rope without recognizing that God is the rope and that I'm holding on and God is revealed in me. It's just the hard way. Starting with cause, though, God is the source. There is oneness, there is no separation. The path that starts to God is guided within us by intuition. Intuition, the ability to understand immediately, a knowing from the inner person, the inner voice of God. The kind of knowing that you have to work, not to believe. Let me let you in on a secret. I hear voices. What about you? Voices that try to influence me. Every commercial, marketing, the news, politics, and even me are trying to influence you. I would like to think that I take 100% responsibility and that I am an independent thinker. What about you? Are you thinking for yourself? But there are other voices in my head. Sometimes it's my parents. I can just hear them. Sometimes it's the inner critic. Sometimes it's the pain body. It's the wound that resides within me that just isn't healed yet. And sometimes I hear food talking. Cake, pie, mashed potatoes. Can the church say amen? They talk to me all the time. What doesn't talk to me is plain vegetables and dry rye toast. There's no voice there. But there's always these rules of success in the world, right? You have to follow these rules. But you know what? That really isn't enough. Because it teaches us that there is success at any cost. And that you cannot trust anyone. But mysticism lets us know what and who to trust. We learn from it what is true. From empath to mystic is based on 4 pillars to get this direct experience. Mysticism is about a direct experience with Spirit, with God. And the 4 steps are vision, connection, receptivity, and creativity. And science of mind is a mystical philosophy, not mystery. Mystery is a secret. It's a puzzle. It is something that is not clear. That's not what I'm talking about. Certain things in spirituality are a mystery, but here I am talking about something that is available to everyone, and that is the experience of being led by God. Mysticism is this inner awareness, the presence that we are one with God. It is the sixth sense, this direct experience. The spiritual life cannot completely be understood by our five senses. The ability to see and to hear and to taste and to smell and to touch is how we perceive the world. This is how we perceive the world of effect. But to get to cause, we must trust in God, in spirit, and in love. This is the sixth sense that gives us the ability to recognize the voice of God. The inner voice of God. I know you've heard it. There is a deeper meaning in consciousness. There's the human side. It's what I believe. And there's the spiritual side of what is true, what is principle. And real conscious transformation happens when what I believe is what Spirit has directed me to know is true. Consciousness is the place where my belief and principle come together. It is the voice of Spirit, listening. It is inspiration. Inspiration is clear. When we think of it, we think of art, like we heard this morning, the music and the soloists. It's a transcendent experience, but everything in our life can be inspired by Spirit. Recently, we celebrated Martin Luther King Day. And I cannot say Martin Luther King, or anyone else can say it, without thinking of the famous speech, "I have a dream." Now, we say I am inspired by that, but I think we're really motivated. I think Martin was inspired. That was not the first time he gave the speech. He had given the speech in Detroit, my hometown, before the March on Washington. And he had edited the speech. But he had heard Dr. Prathia Hall, the first African-American woman who's the pastor of American Baptist Church, preach, "I have a dream," and he changed the name of the speech. He edited Mahalia, it's just finished singing and sitting behind him. And what happens in your average black church that you will never forget is the congregation talks back to the preacher. Amen? That is a skill you can pick up for me. Okay? But it happens. So Mahalia is behind Martin Luther King saying, "Martin, tell him about the dream. Martin, tell him about the dream." And he leaves his speech and goes ad-lib and finishes the famous line of, "I have a dream that one day." Inspired, directed, the voice of God right there. 57 years later, and none of us were there, and we have all been touched by that speech. That's inspiration. Here this morning, is there some inspiration that we haven't heard? The speaking of the inner voice to any one of us? The possibility that we could change or that you could change. Is that word here, yet we are not listening? Empath to mystic, the four pillars. Vision, connectivity, receptivity, and creativity. Vision. Without it, the people will perish. It is the what of life. What you need, what you want, is the what. Remember, we don't understand the how. But the vision needs to be clear because it is the motivation, it is the energy to keep us going when times are tough. And the only way we are clearly going to hear the vision is spiritual practice. It all goes back to affirmative prayer, meditation, spiritual reading, reflection, nature, seeing a practitioner, spiritual direction. The principles are taught there. That's just the way it happens. Let me be clear. Worry is not a spiritual practice. Confusion is not a spiritual practice. Restlessness is not a spiritual practice. It's probably a sign that we have not been practicing. Vision, and then there is connection. We must spend time with Spirit for us to know the voice and the direction when it comes. How in the world are you going to know who it is or what it is if you don't spend time there? You have to distinguish the voices in your head. Not only do I hear voices, you hear voices. Your parents are there too. And they mean all the good in the world, but they're there. We have to listen for the guidance of the Spirit. And spiritual practices gives us that connection. Vision, connectivity, receptivity. Going along with the divine direction. When God leads and guides us through the Spirit and through inspiration and intuition, we have to be willing to go. And when we don't know, patient until we understand. It's imperative. See, we often will go to people to get information and their life is worse than ours. Why are we asking other people? Ask the Spirit what we should do. This is the mystic life guided by Spirit, by vision, connectivity, receptivity, and then there's creativity. The infinite intelligence that is within us all. It is knowledgeable enough to lead and guide each one of us. But we must get rid of the fear and the blame and the need for approval. Because developing these 4 pillars gives us this upward spiral of the spiritual life. And how do we know we have a spiritual life? We have its fruit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control. Could it be, if you heard the voice of God, that your life would change? That you would learn to listen to the intuition? Maybe there's peace you'll find, or most importantly, satisfaction. Is it possible that you feel restless, unfulfilled, bored, unhappy, or confusion simply because we are not listening? See, that inner voice of Spirit, of love, whatever name you give it, that inspiration, the intuition, is waiting for us to listen. It is always present to provide guidance, always in clarity and direction. A life of a mystic hears the voice of God. And we often say, it's my responsibility to know the what. And that's the vision. And we trust God for the how. But God directs us on the how. I don't know how. But God's Spirit directs me how. God will only do for us what God will do through us. If the Spirit directs you to sit and wait, sit and wait. But please listen. Maybe we are delaying our freedom simply because we are not listening. Please don't forget that we often believe more in the problem than we believe in the power. As the Clark sisters put it, don't tell God about your problem. Tell your problem about God. Yes. Now, I think that's a firm Tell your problem about God. Opening your mind. Moving away from the world of effect. Yes, you can be under the influence. But what influence are we under? Remember this. We are not sure of everything. We can't conceive all the goodness that is possible. because eyes haven't seen and ears haven't heard. It's never even entered into the human mind. The good things that God has for us, but they are revealed to us by the Spirit. Intuition, inspiration, God's leading and guiding presence. See, I think that's what the Spirit does in our life. It gives us the ability to know who to trust and know what is truth. We have this mind of Christ if we only listen. And no matter what your vision is, eyes haven't seen, ears haven't heard, and it has never entered into the human mind the good things that God has in store for you, but they are revealed to you by the Spirit. And so it is. And just knowing this, that this one power and this one presence leads, guides, and directs, all we have to do is listen. So we open ourselves up to Spirit, to love, to life, knowing that it is beyond comprehension, the good that is waiting for us. And so it is. Money is gone.